This is Jaydin McMickle doing my Martin Luther King presentation, Chapter 9. Chapter 9. One of the most agonizing problems within our human experience is that few, if any of us, will live to see our fondest hopes fulfilled, Martin Luther King said. As a person of color during the Civil Rights Movement, this set hope was to see freedom, to be able to walk as a complete free man. The people were waiting patiently to see freedom, and some and many did not live to see the fog lifted. This is, I would say, is a shattered dream of most people during this time. They wanted to really be able to see the change of laws being lifted and for them to have more freedom to be able to go and do as they please, as in to drink in a water fountain and to not have to worry about racism in America. The next quote I thought that was very interesting is life mirrors many similar experiences. Dr. Martin Luther King creates this idea on how we are reliving the past. A group of people will always face a struggle. He specifically talks about Gandhi trying to gain independence and other historical figures overcoming the struggles of freedom. I kind of put this as a topic relevant today as we face racism, sexism, and other social issues in not having freedoms, such as a Black person walking safely while wearing a hoodie while on a rock or run, members of the LGBT community being able to work, to get married, or to safely be open in the community, or women to be paid equally and not have fear about what they're wearing at night and that if they can have an abortion. There are a lack of freedoms to stay, and allies are trying to find to negate that fight. I believe that when he was talking about life mirrors many similar experiences, as in the struggles that Gandhi faced, are the struggles that Black people faced during the Civil Rights Movement, and that are people of the LGBT community, um, African Americans as well, but just in different type of struggles, and women are facing today. Handling. But there are a few ways to handle the lack of freedom and never knowing when the freedom will be gained. The reaction is distilled of our frustrations into core and bitterness and resentment, which which the resentment grows in soul, creating a bitter cast that will never come true, giving up and becoming the problem. I see this kind of today as well, as in protests and other things that in vocalizing ways that communities try to break free from their struggles, um, and do it more with violence and hate rather than peace and protesting for the good cause. I see this also with Martin Luther King, that the frustration of core of bitterness and resentment. Um, they tried to keep peaceful protests during the civil rights movement, but sometimes didn't always happen. So I also think the bitterness and the resentment from never knowing when they would gain freedom got to them. It was meant to be. Another reaction is knowing it was meant to be and there's nothing to do or to change. There's nothing just one person can do by themselves, leading them into a life of disappointment. We as people have long dreamed of freedom, but we are still confined to an oppressive prison of segregation and discrimination. But we respond to the disappointed hope with bitterness and cynicism. I feel like this quote piggybacks onto the last slide and to this one, that because we are oppressed and because people are oppressed in the community and in this world, that we must not feed into the disappointment, but feed into the hope and try and see another solution out of this problem. Our capacity to deal creatively with shattered dreams is ultimately determined by our faith of God. Genuine faith imbues us with a conviction that beyond time is a divine spirit and beyond life is life. However, dismal and catastrophic may be the present circumstance, but we know we are not alone, for God dwells with us in life's most confining and oppressive cells. And even if we die there without having received the earthly promise, he shall lead us down that mysterious road called death, and at last to that indescribably city he has prepared for us. His creative power is not exhausted by this earthly life, nor his majestical love locked within the limited walls of time and space. Would not would not this strangely irrational universe, if God did not ultimately join virtue in fulfillment, in an absurdly meaningless universe of death for blind alley, leading the human race into a state of nothingness? God, through Christ, has taken the sting from death by freeing us from its dominion. Our earthly life is a prelude of glories to awakening, and our death is the open door that leads us into life eternal. I see this quote as Martin Luther King saying that they know that they were not alone in this fight, and that God was um, with them as they took on this fight on racism and the civil rights. But if people did not make it past, did not get to see the freedom, that God would lead them in heaven, into a freedom that they can have in heaven. And not just when you die, you die and you never got to be a part of the solution, or you never got to see the freedom, or never got to have the freedom, but that when if you die while in this battle, that when you go to heaven, you will receive this freedom. Um, in that it's just not, you just don't die and just don't receive the freedom. There is nothing of aliveness of life left in them. There is only a dull motion of bare existence. The disappointment hope leads into a crippling cynicism. With Omar Khayyam, they would affirm. The worldly hope men set their hearts upon turn to ashes, or it prospers. And Anna, like snow upon the desert's dusty face, lightning, a little hour or two is gone. So it's kind of very similar as the last one. Um, that when there is no more left, when there's no more fight, that they will still receive this freedom, um, and it will be given to them. No matter any circumstances, it will be given to them if they had gone through the fight. Many of the world's most influential characters have transformed their thrones into crowns. Charles Darwin was almost always physically ill. Robert Louis Stevenson was inflicted with tuberculosis. Helen Keller was blind and deaf, but they did not respond to these conditions with bitter resentment or grim fatalism. I see this quote as these historical figures that had issues, mental or physical issues, that could inhibit them from being quote unquote normal, and that they still prospered with these issues, and knowing knowing with this fight. I can relate to this with being a person of color, that because of my skin color, there is judgment and there is ridicule with just having the skin color. But you can overcome it by not feeding into their judgment, and doing your own thing and becoming better than they are, basically. Like Helen Keller was, blind and deaf, but she could speak and she could read and she understood, and they did not feed into the bitter resentment. They embraced it, and they continued on with their life. And that's why I think Shattered Dreams come into play is your dreams may be on hold due to a judgment or something wrong with you or something you can't help. But that does not mean you need to feed into the demon, that you can prosper and go on with your life, um, without feeding into this. So, and with this faith, we can accept nobly what cannot be changed and face disappointments and sorrow with our inner poise. We will have the power to absorb the most excruciating pain without losing our sense of hope. We will then know that in our life and death, God will take care of us. In the end, this freedom will be gained, whether it's if you're alive or not, and God will make sure that your freedom is gained if you just do what is right and do what is asked. And here are the citations. Thank you.